On the phone with us right now is Scott Cooper, and he is with the Partnership to End Poverty in Central Oregon. Project Connect was an effort to connect those who are in need, including the homeless, with services to meet their needs. Scott, this last September was the 5th year for Project Connect. How'd it go?
It was the 5th year, and we had the largest turnout we have had so far, both in terms of guests who came to take advantage of services and volunteers who came to provide those services. We had a total of 3,421 people who got counted at the front doors as they came in, which is up from about 3,000 last year, and we had 803 volunteers. And I have to say it's the smoothest event that we've put on yet. I was just amazed. There were 150 different agencies offering 170 different services at the event, everything from feeding people to helping people find clothing, helping people find employment, helping people find housing, giving them counseling on Social Security disability benefits. I mean, everything was there.
Okay. The economy has taken a dive. A lot of people are without jobs, and many are without homes. We're starting to see that, aren't we, in projects like Project Connect?
Well, you know, we see two types of people who come in the doors. We see people who, what we call the generational folks in poverty, folks that one generation after another have struggled, and we've seen an awful big uptick in what we call situational poverty, people who maybe were just doing fine a year or two ago, and suddenly the bottom fell out from underneath them, and those are the folks that need this project the most because they don't have any idea where to even begin to look for services. And they've got a lot of deferred issues, whether it's deferred medical, deferred dental, deferred haircut, you know, whatever it is, and they're looking for somebody to give them some road signs as to where do I go from here as I begin to put my life back together.
So that brings us to the next question. Where do we go from here? The situation is not getting better, is it?
It depends. I don't think it's as bleak as we make it out. It's certainly a terrible situation. It's difficult to find jobs, but for folks that are willing to maybe downsize their expectations a little bit from where they've been, there are opportunities out there. The employers are still hiring, but you know, you aren't necessarily going to walk in at the same salary that you walked out at. And you know, you may be looking at a different living arrangement, and you're not going to count on the fact that housing increase is going to fund your retirement anymore. You may be working a little longer than you planned on. Some basic accommodations.
So Project Connect is designed to reach out on a one-time basis, but what you've been having is Project Mobile Connects, various smaller projects throughout Central Oregon throughout the year. Are those going to continue, and what about the future for Project Connect?
Project Connect itself has been moved over to Volunteer Connect starting next year. Our longtime coordinator for the last 5 years had a wonderful opportunity to go and be closer to her family in Northern California, and so Cindy Pasco has left our staff on very good terms and will be very much missed. But this event has become so significant in terms of its use of volunteers that it kind of made sense for us to look at a new model for delivery and talk about having Volunteer Connect take over the administration of it, because the management of the volunteers is such a big part. So that'll start in 2012. Meanwhile, we have been doing for the past year these little Project Mobile Connects. We had a small grant to do that, and that was in response to some comments we'd heard where folks said, Project Connect is great, but poverty goes on year-round. What do we do out in the communities whenever we're not able to, when people can't wait a year to get to services, whether they be medical, dental, housing, employment, whatever. And so we said, well, what if we go to the places where people are? What if we set up these little events around the region that are smaller in scale but themed around the same idea as Project Connect, and we try and serve place-bound people where they were at? Well, it turned out to be wildly successful. It far exceeded our expectations. We had targeted to serve an extra 1,000 people over the course of the year, and we served at just under 2,200 people through the course of the year. We had events in all of Central Oregon's major communities, and we saw a whole group of people that we've never seen at Project Connect. So we are hoping that we'll be able to continue that. We have a grant in for some funding to be able to make that go, and we have an agreement with Volunteer Connect that they will take that on as well as Project Connect if the grant money comes through.
So, Volunteer Connect, what does that look like going forward?
Volunteer Connect was an organization that was created a few years ago by the Partnership to End Poverty, and it's there to connect people to their passion in volunteering. So they maintain a registry of volunteers, they maintain training for volunteers, they create all kinds of listings of volunteer opportunities, and people are able to get in there and find out exactly how they can serve wherever their passion might lead them. And they're well staffed and they're funded, and I think they're going to become more and more an important part of the Central Oregon nonprofit landscape.
So is Volunteer Connect going to continue to have these Connect type events, or will they be available daily? What's the model there?
Well, they use a internet-based website to connect people to them, but then they're also going to directly administer not only the Project Connect and the Project Mobile Connect, but also they administer the Days of Service program on Martin Luther King Day.
So as they have more of contact with people that need services, could this also be used as a good baseline reference for exactly how big the problem is out there? Absolutely.
You know, any sort of direct contact with the folks that are in need is an indicator of what's going on. This is something that's hard to keep track of. We all know anecdotally what the situation is with poverty, but getting hard numbers on it is tough. The poverty measure itself moves up and down. The sampling of the communities is both, it differs depending on the size of the community, and it's inconsistent in terms of the people that it reaches out to. So I think it's really important that as we look at poverty and we look at what's happening with people economically, that we be informed both by the stories as well as the data.
Now, Scott, the Partnership to End Poverty, how long has that been in existence?
We came in as the Central Oregon Partnership in 2001.
So the situation, the game has changed a lot. The economy has definitely taken a dive, and some people are calling this the Great Recession. Things are a lot different now than when you embarked on the Partnership to End Poverty. Mm-hmm. So going forward, what is the Partnership to End Poverty? What are you guys doing? Are you retooling? What's happening there?
Well, we continue to work on programs that try and interrupt the cycle of poverty. We're not interested in short-term solutions that simply sustain people where they're at. We're looking at long-term solutions that are able to help people permanently make a change in their economic status. More and more we believe that going forward, the answers for poverty are to gain secure employment and to gain the assets and the skills that are necessary in order to gain that employment. We are looking long-term, and we're saying there's data out there that says by 2018, 54% of the workforce is going to need some sort of post-secondary education. We've already got a 30% dropout rate. That's not going to work. We got to be looking at career technical education in high schools. We got to be looking at retraining options for the adult workforce. We've got to be looking at ways that this community can become attractive to new employers who will utilize not only the skill sets we have, but skill sets we have yet to develop. It comes down to a lot of job creation and a lot of education that's got to be done in a short amount of time if we're going to be competitive.
So does the Partnership to End Poverty facilitate the discussion on these long-term solutions? Are you looking at actively advocating something? Or
we will be facilitating that, and we'll also be doing some investments in those areas in the coming year. We'll be announcing that with our work plan that we roll out in January.
Any specific examples you can tease us with?
Oh, we have a great little project right now that's going with Redmond High School that I'm really excited about, to do a training program kicking off in January for adults and kids simultaneously being trained for some medical professions work. That particular program is targeted at not only helping kids get the skills that prevents them from getting into poverty as they leave the system, but also invites their parents along to come in and be trained alongside of them in the high school. And I think that's a really exciting new model, the idea that we are dealing with two generations at once, not just one generation, and trying to break this cycle.
That's interesting. So you have the students and their parents learning right along with the students.
Same class, same instructor.
Amazing. Has that ever been done in high school before?
I have not found a model that looks like that, so this will be an interesting ride.
Why are we proposing to do this? Why are we looking at doing this specifically?
It's just one. It was an opportunity. A lot of our stuff ends up being opportunity because we've got people that are champions of it, that are creative thinkers outside the box, and we are able to take some of our resources, combine them with their resources, and come up with these new strategies. Because that's, if we want the same as what we've been getting, we should just keep doing the same thing. And I think we can all agree that what we've been getting is not acceptable going forward. We got to do something different, but nobody really knows for sure what something different looks like.
Right.
Another project that we have been very involved in are these campus outreach programs in Prineville and Madras, trying to figure out how to deliver education to place-bound people. And those opened, both the Madras and Prineville campuses opened with the help of COCC and OSU this fall, and each of them has over 200 students enrolled who are actively seeking to upgrade their skills. And I think that's more of what we're going to need going forward if we're going to really tackle this long-term poverty issue.
Do you find that some of these tools for long-term solutions and trying to end poverty and revamp the education system, are they different community by community, or does one model fit all? In other words, is there a different approach you want to use in Prineville and Madras than in Bend?
Well, I think every community has its own history and its own challenges and its own economic struggles. But the root cause of poverty, regardless of where you live, is you don't have a skill set or you don't have the job base to compete in the contemporary economy.
But then that $64,000 question is, where are the new jobs, and what industry would that be?
They're not going to be in the jobs that we were all trained for, and they're not going to be for folks that never completed their high school education. I guarantee you that.
Okay. Parnership to End Poverty. It's a name that signifies a rather large goal. There are some that said, it's kind of like bailing out the ocean with a teaspoon, and now even more so. So what would you say to the folks that take a look at that and say it's an unattainable goal?
I would say that bailing out the ocean with a teaspoon starts with taking out the first teaspoon. And if you don't ever put the teaspoon in, you'll never get any progress.
If people want to get involved with your efforts in Partnership to End Poverty, how do they get a hold of you?
We're always looking for ideas. They can drop us a line at info@partnershiptoendpoverty.org, or they can give us a call at our offices in Redmond, 541-504-1389. We're always glad to hear from folks that have ideas.
And on a day-to-day basis, what do you do at the partnership?
We're only a very small staff of only 5 people, so mostly our work revolves around convening other folks in conversations and in talking about leveraging some of our resources that we have available with other folks to make their work go forward. And
can you give us some examples?
Sure. We make a small investment every year up at around the region in working on our Earned Income Tax Credit program. Earned Income Tax Credit, Earned Income is available only to folks who have returned to work. It's the #1 proven program for helping low-income women in particular go back into the workforce, and we know that going back into the workforce is key to being able to get out of poverty, so we're able to use that program to help people figure out how to do that. We do some financial planning and financial counseling with folks. We're doing a series of projects that we'll be working on next year involving identification, where we are able to help folks who do not have an ID get connected to a birth certificate or a driver's license or other government-issued ID. One of the challenges we're seeing is with the implementation of the Patriot Act and the requirement that employers verify your identification and your citizenship. A lot of folks don't have the basic papers they need to be able to establish that. Well, if you don't have those papers, you can't get that job. But if you can't get that job, you're not going to change your economic situation.
Talking to Scott Cooper with the Partnership to End Poverty. Scott, thank you very much for your time.
Sure, Dave. Thank you.